In the silent stretch of space, a woman stands on the edge of history as an ancient dragon's kin arrive in ships of living light. They have come not just to reclaim their lost one, but to offer her a choice that could change the fate of two worlds forever. Every second counts, and the decision she makes will echo across the stars. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video and tell us where are you watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The twin suns of Martha's Reach hung low in the sky, casting long copper shadows across the barren mining outpost. Wind carried fine red dust that settled into every crack of the weathered buildings. The settlement had been built for extraction, not comfort, and its metal walls groaned under years of neglect. Kalindra Wren stepped off her transport skimmer, adjusting the strap of her satchel. She had come for a routine supply run before returning to her research site in the outer canyons. Her work as a field biologist often brought her to remote worlds, but Martha's Reach was different. It carried a weight in the air, a quiet resignation that clung to its street's dot as she moved through the narrow lanes between storage hangars. Her attention caught on a sound. It was not machinery, nor the metallic scrape of mining equipment. It was softer, a low melodic trill that seemed almost out of place in this harsh environment. Drawn by curiosity, she followed the sound into a shadowed cargo yard. There, against the corroded hull of an abandoned freighter, she saw it. A young dragon, no larger than a cargo hauler, lay on the ground. Its scales shimmered silver blue even under the dust, catching the dim light like polished metal. Heavy chains bound its neck and forelegs, the crude restraints rubbing raw patches into its hide. The dragon lifted its head as she approached, luminous violet eyes meeting hers. There was no wild panic, no mindless rage. Instead, there was a deep, unsettling intelligence in that gaze, as if it had been waiting for someone to see it. Kalindra crouched slowly, keeping her voice calm. "You're still here," she murmured, as though speaking to an old friend. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a wrapped packet. "I brought you something better than ration cubes." She placed a strip of preserved meat within its reach. The dragon sniffed cautiously, then took it with surprising gentleness. A small service drone floated nearby, its once white casing scuffed from years of use. The machine emitted a curious beep, circling the dragon protectively. Kalindra smiled faintly. "You've made a friend," she said, tossing the drone a power cell. It caught the item in its manipulator with unexpected skill. As the dragon ate, she studied it with the trained eye of someone who had documented exotic life across 20 settled systems. The scale pattern along its underbelly shifted from silver to pearlescent white. The bound wings hinted at intricate designs, folded so tightly they could barely move. But it was the eyes that held her, bright orbs that followed her every movement with awareness, far beyond animal instinct. She extended her hand slowly, letting the creature decide. It tensed, then leaned forward just enough for her fingers to brush the scales between its eyes. The skin beneath was warm, the texture smooth yet strong. The dragon made another low trill, softer this time, and closed its eyes briefly. Kalindra felt something shift inside her. Decades in the field had taught her to keep a scientist's detachment, but in that moment, she could not see the dragon as a specimen. She saw a prisoner. She examined the chains, noting how they bit into the flesh and restricted movement. "Someone has been neglecting you badly," she said under her breath. The dragon responded with a sound that carried a mournful note. Rising to her feet, she brushed the dust from her field trousers. "I can't leave you here," she decided. She knew it was not part of her mission, but she also knew she would not walk away. She began asking questions in the settlement, careful to keep her tone casual. Martha's Reach was the kind of place where outsiders were met with suspicion, especially those with academic credentials. After hours of persistence, she learned the dragon belonged to a prospector named John Rectal, who claimed to have won it in a gambling match with an off-world trader. She found him in the only tavern, a dim metal-walled structure ironically named the Starview, despite having no windows. Tal was a broad man with sun-hardened skin and the calculating eyes of someone who measured everything in terms of profit. "I hear you've got a dragon," Kalindra said, sitting across from him without asking. "Not for sale," Tal replied. "Instantly, it's my luck charm. Found me the richest vein of iridite on this rock." "It's suffering," she said plainly. "Those chains are causing injury. It's not getting the nutrition it needs." Tal shrugged. "It eats what I eat. Tough little beast, survived worse." "Name your price," she said. His eyes narrowed. "I told you it's not for sale." "Everyone has a price," she countered. The negotiation dragged on. Tal tested her resolve with inflated numbers, but she never flinched. Finally, he leaned back and named a sum that would drain nearly 3 months of her research stipend. Kalindra did not hesitate. "Done," she said, transferring the credits to his account. "What's so special about it?" he asked, suspicious. "It deserves better than chains," she replied. She left the tavern with a digital ownership record and returned to the cargo yard. The dragon's gaze followed her every step, as if sensing the change. "You're coming with me?" she said softly. "No more chains?" Freeing it was not easy. The locks were rusted, the metal fused in places. She worked with her multi-tool until the final chain clattered to the ground. For a moment, the dragon did not move, as if unsure the freedom was real. Then, slowly, it stretched its wings for the first time in what must have been months. The span was breathtaking, nearly 4 meters across, with translucent membranes marked by constellations of silvery veins. The muscles trembled from disuse, but the dragon held them open, catching the fading sunlight. Kalindra felt her throat tighten. "Easy," she said quietly. "You'll need time to heal." The service drone hovered closer, emitting an eager sequence of beeps. "Yes," she told it with a faint smile. "You can come too. Looks like you're both part of this now." As the suns dipped toward the horizon, she began planning the careful trip back to her research vessel. Somewhere deep inside, she knew this was no ordinary rescue. It was the start of something far greater than she could yet imagine. The journey back to the horizon's arc was quiet, the hum of the transport skimmer blending with the low whistle of wind across the barren flats. Kalindra Wren sat in the rear compartment beside the dragon, her hand resting lightly on the harness, straps that kept him secure. The creature's eyes shifted between the windows and her face, studying both with a steady intelligence. The small service drone floated just above, humming softly as if keeping watch. When they reached the docking bay, Marin Kellen was waiting. His dusty boots and warm field jacket spoke of someone accustomed to remote expeditions, but his raised eyebrow said he had not been expecting this particular passenger. "You brought home a dragon," he said, his voice caught between surprise and concern. "I brought home a survivor," Kalindra replied. "Help me get him inside." Together, they guided the dragon into the secondary cargo hold. Kalindra had already been thinking of how to make the space comfortable. She adjusted the environmental controls, increasing the temperature and fine-tuning the humidity. Soft light replaced the harsh overhead strips, revealing the faint shimmer in the dragon's silver-blue scales. The dragon lowered himself onto the padded flooring, wings tucked close. Kalindra knelt beside him with a medical kit, speaking softly as she cleaned and treated the wounds left by the chains. The service drone hovered nearby, passing her tools without being asked. Marin watched from the doorway, his scientific curiosity slowly overcoming his skepticism. "Those eyes," Marin said quietly. "There's something there." "I've seen a lot of creatures," Kalindra said, gently applying regenerative gel to the raw patches, but nothing like him. He understands more than he should. Over the next few days, the cargo hold became more than a recovery space. It became a place of unspoken connection. Kalindra spent her off hours sitting cross-legged near the dragon, reading her research notes aloud or simply talking about her. The dragon would respond with low melodic trills, the sounds carrying different tones depending on his mood. One evening, while Marin was logging samples in the lab, Kalindra entered the hold with a tray of fresh protein strips. The dragon took them carefully, then tilted his head as she set down her datapad. He watched as she drew a series of shapes on the screen, simple circles, triangles, and squares. To her surprise, the dragon leaned forward and tapped the screen, with the tip of a claw, tracing a shape that mirrored hers. Kalindra smiled. "You can do more than just watch, can't you?" She tried drawing a line pattern, and again, the dragon matched it with remarkable precision. The next day, she brought a stylus. The dragon accepted it delicately in his talons and began to create shapes unprompted, not random marks, but patterns that repeated and intersected, forming a script she had never seen. Marin arrived mid-session and froze in the doorway. "Is he writing?" "Something like it," Kalindra replied. "I don't recognize the symbols, but they're too precise to be random." Marin stepped closer, studying the patterns. "These lines have structure, repetition, symmetry. This could be language." The dragon paused, meeting Marin's gaze, then continued with deliberate strokes. When he finished, he set the stylus down and made a short trill, as though announcing, "The work complete." Kalindra leaned over the screen. "If this is your language, we're going to learn it," she said. From that moment, the bond deepened. Every day, she and Marin would spend time in the hold, showing the dragon new symbols and observing his responses. They began associating images with the symbols he provided, slowly building a rudimentary lexicon. The service drone, always present, seemed to sense the significance. It recorded each session, sometimes projecting a replay of previous symbols for comparison. The dragon would study these carefully before adding new marks, refining his script as if teaching them rather than the other way around. As the days passed, his physical strength returned. He stretched his wings in the larger open bay, the translucent membranes catching the ship's light like glass, woven with threads of silver. Each movement carried an elegance that hinted at long-forgotten skies. Yet even as he recovered, his eyes often turned to the stars visible through the small cargo viewport. There was a longing there, quiet but unmistakable, like someone remembering a place far away. One evening, Kalindra entered the hold to find him tracing patterns on the floor with the tip of his claw. She recognized some as the symbols he had drawn before, but others were new. When she pointed at one in question, he made a soft harmonic tone, almost like a chord played on an unseen instrument. Marin, who had been observing from the doorway, said, "That tone was different. I think it's more than sound. It's part of the message." The realization came slowly. The dragon's communication was not only visual, but also auditory. Each pattern could be accompanied by a harmonic signature, giving the symbols depth and nuance. They began experimenting, matching tones to marks. The service drone joined in, recording and playing back the harmonics with surprising accuracy. The dragon seemed pleased, his eyes brightening whenever they successfully replicated the sound. Kalindra had never worked with a species so willing to bridge the gap between minds. The sessions felt less like research and more like conversation. One night, after a particularly productive exchange, she sat beside him on the floor. "You're not just learning from us," she said quietly. "You're teaching us. And I think you've been waiting a long time to do it." The dragon lowered his head until his gaze was level with hers, his violet eyes reflecting the soft light. He made a low trill that resonated in her chest, a sound she instinctively understood as agreement. In that moment, Kalindra knew the connection was no longer just between scientist and subject. It was a growing trust, the kind that could change the course of both their lives. The cargo hold was no longer just a place to keep him safe. It had become the space where two worlds began to meet, where understanding replaced chains, and where a bond stronger than any restraint was quietly being forged. The Horizon's arc left Marthan's reach under a pale dawn, its engines humming steadily as it climbed into the upper atmosphere. Kalindra Wren stood in the cockpit beside Marin Kellen, watching the orange haze of the planet give way to the cold darkness of space. The Dragon, now strong enough to move freely, rested in the wide observation bay with the small service drone hovering close by. They had planned to head toward the outer colonies to complete their research before returning to the Institute. But the quiet ascent did not last. A sharp alert cut through the calm. The ship's sensors had detected a vessel approaching at high velocity. Marin checked the readings, his brow tightening. "That's an enforcement craft," he said. "Nova command markings. They're signaling us to power down." Kalindra's stomach tightened. "This is about him," she said, meaning the Dragon. Someone must have reported him as stolen property. The incoming transmission confirmed her fears. A clipped voice demanded they prepare for boarding, citing possession of an unregistered biological asset. Kalindra glanced toward the observation bay where the Dragon was watching, his violet eyes alert. "They don't see you as a person," she told him, "only as cargo. We can't let them take you." Marin's hands moved over the controls. "The Horizon's arc isn't built for speed," he warned. "We can't outrun them for long." Kalindra made a quick decision. "Take us toward the Oran Canyon system. The mineral deposits there might block their scans." Marin swung the ship into a steep turn, engines straining. The enforcement craft followed, closing the gap. In the observation bay, the Dragon moved toward the cockpit, the service drone trailing. Through the translator program on the drone, his voice came as steady text and sound. "Danger because of me," he said. "It's not your fault," Kalindra replied, her eyes on the shrinking distance between them and their pursuer. The Dragon's gaze shifted between them, then he spoke again. "I can help." Before either could respond, he stepped into the center of the cockpit and unfurled his wings to their full span. Light began to glow beneath the translucent membranes. Faint at first, then building into a brilliant silver radiance, threaded with shifting patterns. "What are you doing?" Marin asked, splitting his focus between piloting and the extraordinary sight. "Harmonic interference," the Dragon answered. "My kind use it to mask our presence from hostile tracking." The glow pulsed in rhythmic waves. The ship's sensors flickered, and a warning appeared on the console. The enforcement craft's targeting systems had lost lock. "It's working," Kalindra said, her voice tight with urgency. "Keep going." Marin guided the Horizon's arc into the twisting canyons of the Oran system. Jagged cliffs rose on either side, their mineral composition scattering most forms of scanning. The enforcement craft followed, but struggled to match the maneuvering through the narrow paths. The Dragon's glow dimmed as he folded his wings, his breathing heavier. "Interference is temporary," he said through the translator. Kalindra looked to Marin. "We need a longer-term plan, something that gets proof of his sentience to the Institute. Once they confirm his status, Nova Command won't be able to claim him as property. The array doesn't have enough range from down here," Marin said. "We'd have to go higher, and they'd see us immediately." The service drone gave a sharp sequence of beeps, its display lighting up with scrolling text. "I can transmit," it indicated. "Load me with proof and send me to higher ground." "It would be too risky," Marin said. They'd intercept you before you could finish. Not if I create a distraction, the dragon interrupted. A larger interference pattern will draw them away. Kalindra shook her head. They'd go after you directly. You could be captured. Worth the risk, he replied simply. Freedom for one can mean recognition for many. Reluctantly, they prepared the plan. Kalindra and Marin loaded the drone with every piece of evidence, recordings of the dragon's writing, audio of his harmonic communication, and video logs of their interactions. They boosted the drone's transmitter range and programmed its route to the highest ridge in the canyon system. As the suns dipped below the jagged horizon, the horizon's arc lifted briefly from cover. The dragon and the drone launched together, splitting in opposite directions once they cleared the canyon lip. The enforcement craft immediately broke. Pursuit of the ship to chase the dragon's dazzling display. His wings shone like molten silver, casting reflections across the canyon walls. Each beat sent ripples of interference through the air, scrambling the pursuer's systems. Meanwhile, the drone sped toward the ridge, nearly invisible against the rocky backdrop. Kalindra and Marin tracked its ascent from the cockpit. Transmission initiated, Marin reported as the signal reached its peak. Broadcasting on all Institute emergency channels. In the canyon above, the dragon's flight faltered slightly, his movements slower as fatigue set in. The enforcement vessel pressed its advantage, herding him toward a narrowing gap between cliffs. Kalindra gripped the console. He's running out of room. Before Marin could respond, a new signal cut across their systems. An incoming transmission from high orbit. Research vessel Horizon's Ark, a calm voice said. We have received your message and are moving to assist. Hold position. Marin's eyes went to the sensor display. That's impossible. The nearest Institute ship is days away. Then they saw it, a massive vessel descending from orbit, unlike any human craft. Its lines were smooth and crystalline, its movement impossibly precise. Smaller ships detached, one intercepting the enforcement craft and enveloping it in a shimmering containment field, the other diving toward the dragon's faltering form. As the smaller craft reached him, it generated a field of soft light beneath his body, lifting him gently out of the canyon. Kalindra stared in awe. Those are Institute ships, she whispered. The voice returned over the combs, melodic yet clear. Kalindra Wren, we thank you for aiding Lyras of the Aetherin. Your actions will not be forgotten. Marin. And Kalindra exchanged a look, the reality sinking in. The dragon's people had found them. The chase was over, but the story was only beginning. The crystalline vessels hovered in the still air above the canyon, their surfaces glowing faintly with shifting colors that seemed to flow like liquid light. Kalindra Wren stood on the observation deck of the Horizon's Ark, watching as the smaller craft carried the dragon toward the larger ship. Lyras, the Aetherin she had fought so hard to protect, appeared calm in their care, his wings folded neatly against his body. The containment field holding him aloft shimmered gently, not as a prison, but as a protective cradle. Marin Callan joined her at the viewport, his voice low. I've never seen anything like them. Their movement, their technology. It's beyond anything in our records. Before she could reply, the comms lit up again. The same melodic voice that had spoken before filled the cabin. Kalindra Wren, Marin Callan. You have safeguarded one of our own at great personal risk. This act is remembered in the harmonies of our people. Kalindra stepped forward. Who are you? We are the Aetherin, the voice said. We are the keepers of the harmonic fields, travelers between the strands of space. Through the viewport, 3 larger figures appeared beside Lyras. Their scales gleamed in deep emerald, silver, and gold, each patterned with glowing lines that pulsed in rhythm. They circled him in silence, exchanging what could only be a wordless language of light and resonance. Lyra's voice came through the translator device aboard the ship, steady and clear. "These are members of my Harmony cluster. They are my kin." Calendra's chest tightened, a mix of relief and the ache of knowing she might soon have to let him go. "You've been searching for him all this time?" "For 3 of your years," the melodic voice answered. His resonance was faint until recently. When he unleashed his full harmonic pattern, we heard him across the gulf. On the surface. Below, the enforcement vessel that had chased them hung suspended in the containment field of the Aetherian craft. Its weapons were dead, its engines silent. No one on board attempted resistance. The Aetherian had disabled them with precision. And without destruction. Marin glanced at Calindra. "What happens now?" The voice replied before she could speak. "Your authorities will be informed that Lyra's is a sovereign being of an intelligent species. No claim of ownership will be recognized. Your records will carry this event as first contact." Calindra exchanged a quiet look with Marin. First contact was a term that reshaped history. It meant not just meeting another intelligent species, but the opening of a dialogue between worlds. Hours later, Calindra and Marin were invited aboard the main Aetherian vessel. The interior was unlike any human craft. It seemed alive, its walls flowing gently, as if shaped by sound rather than by tools. A soft hum filled the air, resonating faintly in their bones. They were led to a chamber where Lyras rested, his wounds fully treated, his eyes bright. He lowered his head as they entered. "You came," he said simply. Calindra approached, placing her hand lightly on the smooth surface beside him. "I had to see you before you left." One of the elder Aetherian, the silver-scaled figure who introduced himself as Korath, stepped closer. "Lyra's wishes to return home, but he carries a request." Lyras lifted his gaze to hers. "I ask that you come with me to our world, to see who we are, to speak for your kind as I will speak for mine." The word struck her like a pulse. "Of light, you want me to go to your home?" "Yes," Lyra said. "You treated me as a person when others did not. You saw value in my life beyond what could be measured. That is the kind of voice my people need to hear from yours." Marin raised a brow. "You'd be the first human to visit their world." "Do you realize what that means?" Calindra nodded slowly. "I do. It means trust, and it means change." Korath added, "Your journey would not be without challenge. Our world lies beyond the mapped regions of your explorers. The path is hidden within the harmonic fields. But if you accept, it will begin a bridge between our peoples." Calindra turned back to Lyras. "If I go, will I be able to return?" "Yes," he replied. "But when you return, you will see your stars differently." Silence settled for a moment in the chamber, broken only by the low hum of the living walls. Finally, Calindra smiled faintly. "Then I'll go." Lyra's wings shifted in what could only be relief. The elder Aetherian inclined his head. "Then the harmonies will welcome you." Preparations began at once. The Horizons Ark was transferred under the care of Institute personnel, who had arrived after the Aetherian secured the area. The enforcement vessel was released into human custody with strict conditions to prevent further interference. As the Aetherian vessel rose from the canyon and into the open void of space, Calindra stood beside Lyra's in the observation chamber. The stars stretched out before them, endless and alive with unseen connections. "What will I see first?" she asked quietly. Lyra's voice was steady, almost gentle. "You will see the place where sound becomes light, where the sky sings, and the sea glows like the inside of a crystal. You will see the home I lost, and the home I will return to because of you." The ship turned, aligning itself toward a region of space that looked no different than the rest to her eyes. Yet, as the vessel engaged its harmonic drive, the view shifted. The stars bent and blurred, replaced by cascading waves of luminous color that pulsed in perfect rhythm. Kalindra realized she was hearing something too, not with her ears, but deep inside her mind. A sound like countless voices woven together, carrying the weight of ages. Marin's voice crackled faintly through the combs from the horizons. Ark, now a distant speck. Safe travels, Kalindra. Make it count, she smiled, her gaze fixed on the unfolding light. I will. And as the Aetherian vessel vanished into the harmonies of the void, Kalindra felt the certainty that this was only the beginning of a journey far greater than she had ever imagined.